On the third page of printouts, the third page of the Mimer, page Reish Lamed Beis, on the top of the page, after the two words on the top line, B'derech Dilug, at the end of the brackets. So the Rebbe is trying to explain the difference between the Oir of Soivev versus the Oir of Mamale. That the Oir of Mamale, even though it seems to be that in the Oir there is no division and definition of the Oir, it only happens when it comes into the Kalim that the Oir looks like Oir HaChachma and functions like an Oir HaChachma and functions like the Oir of Bina. But in truth, the fact that it is susceptible to the changes that the Kalim make in it, that means that the Oir already has in it a level of his chalkus. That is the Oir HaMamal Kalam, and as opposed to the Oir of Soivev Kalam. The Oir of Soivev Kalam is higher than the level of the Ischalkos, it's Bepshitas, there's no divisions, there's no limitations, and so on. So now he's continuing and concluding in this difference, and he says, because there was the Tzimtzum Harishon, because there was this empty space after the Oir Ein Sof was removed, till the Kav came about, so even once the Kav came about, the way it is manifesting, the Oir Ein Sof is like, if you will, chopped. There is, like he said, it's a skip, it's a jump, and because of that, it's liable and susceptible and has in it the idea of ischalkus. Top of the page, third word on the line. Therefore, Gamat Vekis Doira Kav, also the light of the Kav, the way it cleaves and the way it connects to the Oir Ein Sof that was there before the Tzimtzum, he Dveikis Shaidei Hefsek. It's called connecting and cleaving, but through a split, through a cutoff. The Ein of B'chinas Dveikus Mamish. It's not a total connection and cleaving to the Oir Ein Sof. U'b'meila Ein of B'chinas Oir V'gilu Kol Kach. Therefore, the light of the Kav is not, even though it's light, but it's not so much light and so much revelation. So it says the commercial is, for example, Chayis Asayris, the life force and energy that goes into hair. It is different than the life force of the neshama, the vitality of the neshama, the way it's enclosed in the different limbs and organs of the body. Shehu, the life force in the hair, is chayis metzumtzum b'yoser. It's a very constricted vitality. Va'ad to such a degree that when you cut hair, ein margish ke'ev, a person does not feel any pain. Because the way the hair comes out from the brain, from the head, it's cut off, it's separated by the skull. So now, based on this, we can understand the difference between the Oir HaMamale as we find it in the Kav versus the Oir HaSoivev. Similar to this. It's in the Nimshal above. The Oir HaSoivev, the light of Soiv Kalam, which is not the Kav. Since the way it's drawn down from its source, and the way it cleaves to its source is not through a cutoff, I could ask, even Soiv Kalam came after the Tzimtzum. There was a Tzimtzum edition, there was nothing there. Then the Oir HaSoivev and the Oir HaKav came about. So why are you telling me, the Oir HaKav came through a hefsek, so therefore it's not so much of a gilui. The Oir HaSoivev came not through a hefsek. So he says, how do you do? Shepu'ulas HaTzimtzum ba'Oir HaSoivev, he be'ikr, loy b'negei l'Oir Gufam. The effect of the Tzimtzum on the light of Soivev is primarily not concerning the light itself. In other words, to change the actual quality of the light of the Oir HaSoivev. Rather, ki im shelo yo'ir begili b'pnimis v'rak b'chinas makif v'soivev. Rather, it should not shine in an internalized fashion, and only the Oir HaSoiv should come in a way that's transcendent and encompassing and so on. When it comes to the light of Memala Kolam, the constriction is concerning the light itself. That through the tzimtzum was drawn down and came into being a type of light that was not there before. The Oir HaGvul. Beforehand, there was the Oir HaBli Gvul, and the light, the power of Gvul was not manifest. When there was a Tzimtzum Rishon, now a new type of entity came about. A Oir HaKav, an Oir of a Malkulam. Whereas the Oir HaSoiviv, the only change that happened with the Oir HaSoiviv from before the Tzimtzum to after the Tzimtzum is, beforehand, the Oir itself was Mamala Kol Mokum HaCholol. It permeated everything internally. Through the Cholol Mokum Panui, then there became what's always described the Igul HaGadol, a great circle. So now this very light that was there before is now in a way that's transcendent. But it's not that a different type and form of light came about. The light of the Soiviv is not something new that came about. Rather, it's the revelation of the infinite light before the Tzimtzum. A revelation that's not through something that is a stopping. Therefore, the difference between Oir HaSoiviv and Oir HaMali is L'chein, the light of Soiviv Kolalmin after the Tzimtzum, Oir V'gili Mamish, its actual light and revelation, Dugmas Chayis Ha'evarim, similar to the vitality of the limbs, that the Chayis, that's mislabish from the limbs, are Mamish, life and energy of the person without any type of hefsek. Therefore, because it's the actual gilui of the Oir, that's why the light of Soiv Kolam is not in a way that takes shape and form. It's not defined, it's not divided, it has no divisions in it and sections in it and so on. As opposed to the light of Mamal Kolam, the light of the Kav, why they have Skat Tzimtzum, the way it came about, the way it's drawn out from the infinite light of Hashem, and the way it cleaves in the Oir Sof is through the cessation and the cutting off of the Tzimtzum. It's not such a state of revelation. Rather, it's similar to the life force and vitality of hairs that is cut off by the skull. Because it's not so revealed, it doesn't have the full force and power of the light, the way it originated in the Oir Sof. That's why who begeder is chalkos. That's why it's at least susceptible to, and it's already able and has the potential of divisions within the light, even though it's not seen until it comes down into the vessels. That through its becoming enclosed in the vessels, then the light will become visible according to the vessel. Because why does it take on the coloring of the vessels, that the Oir becomes the Oir HaChochma and the Oir becomes the Oir HaChesed? Because already in the Oir itself, since it's Mamali, since it's Kav, since it came down through the Hefsek HaTzimtzum, it has already inside of it those types of divisions, those types of definitions, and therefore, when it comes down to the Keli, it's revealed what it has over there innately, as opposed to Soiviv, as we mentioned yesterday. Even when it comes down into the Mamala, into the Kalim, even when Atik, for example, comes down into Zeir Ampin, it doesn't become affected by it, and all of a sudden becomes those type of divisions. All of this was to bring us back to the point of the difference between the revelation in Gan Eden versus the revelation of Mashiach's times. Ois Dalet, bottom of the third page. That's why the revelation, going up and ascending from the revelation of Gan Eden to the revelation of Mashiach's times, is in a way that it's called an escape. Like was explained previously at the beginning of the exact expression that says escape over the upon the spice mountains. Why does it use the term escape? Because it's a diluk shaloi ba'erech, because the aliyah is incomparably higher to what it was before. Because la'asid lava's revelation is so much higher than the revelation of Gan Eden. The kiyum shachiluk shebein oyer hamamala gilud Gan Eden, since the difference between the light of a malaklam, which that is what shines in Gan Eden, la oyer hasoiv vagilud la'asid lava to the light of soiv kalamin, which is the revelation of Mashiach's times. Who, top of page Reish Lamed Gimel, loirak. It's not only the fact it's not just that Memal Kalam is divided by Kalim. Soiv is not. Like we just were saying, that the way the Oira Memali, the way the Oira Soiv came from its mucker, from its source, is completely different. The light of Memal Kalam was drawn down through the separation of the Tzimtzum. As opposed to the light of Soiv Kalalmin, that it's the very same light of the Tzimtzum as before, except it turned into an eagle, it turned into a makif instead of being the panimius filling the entire space. How they move, and therefore it's understood that the difference between the light of Memal Kalam, which is the Gan Eden revelation, versus the light of Soiv Kalam, which is going to be when Mashiach comes, is an incomparable difference. Therefore, the ascent from the revelation of Gan Eden, which is the light of Memal Kalam, to the revelation of Mashiach's times, which is the light of Soiv, is called escape. So he's saying this is like a flip side of what happened in the creation. A lot of times it's brought down in Chassidus that Hashem created Yesh Me'ayin and Gedoy L'Maisa Tzadikim Yoytzer L'Maisa Shemayim V'Aretz, that it's greater the actions of Tzadikim than the actions of the creations of the heavens and earth, because their job is to turn the Yesh back into the Ayin. The similar vein, what are we saying? That from now to Mashiach's times, we got to skip and we got to jump, go beyond an incomparable chasm, an incomparable gap, to go from the light of Memal Kalam that's Gan Eden to the light of Soiv Kalam that's in Mashiach's times, is reflective of that same process in the opposite direction. That from the Oirin Sof, Lifnei Tzimtzum, which eventually became the Oir HaSoiviv, there had to be a jump, there had to be a skip, there had to be a hefsik to be able to come to the light of Memal Kalam, because there is that great big gap. So it's understood when you're reversing the process and you're trying to go from Memal to Soiviv, from Gan Eden to Mashiach's times, you have to also traverse that gap. You have to make that jump, but going in the opposite direction. Let's see it inside again. 3 lines from the end of the top paragraph. Just like the drawing down of the light of the Kav, which is the light of Memal Kalam, the light that comes into Gan Eden, from the infinite light of Hashem before the Tzimtzum, which eventually becomes the light of Soiv. How does that transition come about? It's no way of jumping. That's the whole idea of the Tzimtzum Rishon. That's the hefsek, the separation. That's likened to the skull that separates between the brain and the hair. So too, going in the opposite direction, ascending from the light of Memal Kalam, which is the light of the Kav, to the Oir of Soiv Kalam, Shu Agili Doir and Sof Shlifnei Tzimtzum. That's the revelation of the infinite light before the Tzimtzum. Is also in a way of escaping, not in an order, not in a type of step-by-step process, but it needs to be in a way of a jump. Earlier we said that as high as the level of la'asid lavai is the level of barach doidi laharib samim, that you have to escape. But before that, it says at the beginning of the pasuk, Hayoshevet Baganim, the one that is sitting in the gardens, because before reaching that level of escaping to the level of the Oirin Sof of Soiv Kalam of Mashiach's times, it needs to be prefaced by the level of the gardens, Ganei Natach and Ganei Na'eli. I say, Amnam Imi Yoshagilu de Ganei Nubein Aroch Lagilu de Lasid. Though the revelation of Gan Eden is incomparable to the revelation of Mashiach's times, Afal became, despite that, Hagili de Gan Eden, who Agdama Shayode, Davke Magim Lagili de Lasid, Kanal Betchil Samaymer. Still in all, the revelation of Gan Eden is an introduction, a preface, that through that revelation, only through that, one can reach the revelation of the future time, like we said before at the beginning of the mind. The idea behind this is before the revelation of the 13 attributes of mercy, it says Havaya Havaya. There, we've mentioned this before, that when we enumerate what exactly are the 13 attributes of mercy, so some counts begin from Kael. Hashem, Kael, Rachem, Cham, Ner, Chabayim, Rav Ches, V'emes. So number 1 is Kael, second is Rachum, third is Chamun, etc. Others, or even a different Amar Chassidus, will start from the second Havaya, from the first Havaya. The way the Maimer over here is talking about is the first 2 Havayas is in a way of introduction. Havaya, Havaya. Before you have the revelation of Yud Gim Nitzar Rachmim, Kael, Rachum, Cham, Ner, Chabayim, Rav Ches, V'emes, etc., you are beginning as a preface, as an introduction. You need to have Havaya, Havaya. What is this Havaya, Havaya? Pasuk Taima Begavayu. We know there's a separation in the cantillation and the trop between them. That's why a lot of times you'll see that there's this line between the 2 Havayas. You do on its known the Havaya, Aleph Havaya, the first Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei of the introduction to the Yud Gimel Midas Rachmim is the higher level of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Shem Havaya Shaboyin Sof Shlifnat Tzimtzum. The Havaya, the upper level of Havaya is talking about Havaya. That's the Oirin Sof before the Tzimtzum. V'Havaya Beis Havaya the Lasato Shem Havaya Shaboyin Kaf. The second Havaya is the lower Havaya. That's the Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's in the line of the Kaf. Upasuk time of Begavayu, and there's that separation of the trup between them, indicates who hefsek at simtzum sheben oines of loirakav. That separation between the 2 Havayas corresponds to the separation of the simtzum between the oines of and the light of the kav. And in a similar vein, we find another time of separation between 2 Havayas. That's also indicative of the separation of the oines of and the oirakav. This is also what it says in the first pasuk of Krishma Havaya Lekeinu Havaya. It says Shema Yisrael Havaya Lekeinu Havaya Echad. The question is, why repeat Havaya twice? You can just say Shema Yisrael Havaya Lekeinu Echad. Why does it say Havaya Lekeinu Havaya Echad? Because we're talking here about 2 levels of Havaya, and between the 2 levels of Havaya, you have a separation between them, which is Delekenu. Delekenu atzimtzum shebein Havaya delaela oirin sof shalifnei atzimtzum v'Havaya delasat oirin kaf. The word Delekenu indicates that tzimtzum, that's between the higher level of Havaya, the oirin sof before the tzimtzum, and the lower level of Havaya, which is the line of the kav, the light of the kav. Umevayir v'Maimer, and the Maimer that Rebbe Rashavi explains. Mashakos of Alekenu ben Beis Hashem is Havaya. What it says Alekenu between the 2 names Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Alekenu, because specifically Alekenu, Masha'enken Alekim, as opposed to just Alekim, Im hi yoisei moira al midas hadin, though Alekenu in general, being a derivative of the name Alekim, being of the same root of the name Alekim, so therefore it indicates the idea of judgment, justice, severity, gvura. Still in all, Elokeinu, with that additional thing, yesh by hatoya lechesed v'rachamim, it has a leaning also to kindness and mercy. So it's the midas hadin, the way it's already leaning to kindness and mercy. How is that so? Because it's not a separation that's meant to cause a cutoff. It's a separation that enables a further hamshach. Because only through Elokeinu Achibur is the union and the joining that should be drawn down the revelation and the flow from the higher Havaya to the lower Havaya. In other words, like this: when is something just din? When it's just separation for separation's sake. But if the separation, the din, the judgment, the kavura is meant to be able to bring forth something else, so then it's not a separation that is complete and total din and judgment, but it's a din and judgment that has a leaning towards kindness and compassion, because the separation over here is to enable us to receive something that we wouldn't be able to receive before. He's going to bring an example for this concerning the idea of the light of the kalim in regards to the kav. So he says, we could say the explanation for this is, how do we look at Elokeinu as a din that has a leaning towards chesed and rachman? Because it is something that's enabling the havaya de l'satom. It's similar to what's known concerning the vessels. Though if it would have remained initially the light of the kav, it would not be able to be possible the coming into being of the vessels, and even the entire, in other words, if there would not have been a complete emptying out of the Ein Sof, if there would not have been made a Cholol or Makom Pani, rather, if he would have reduced the Ein Sof that filled the entire space, reduced it like all the other tzimtzumim until there was only a kav, so then Kalim would not be able to come into being. Mikol Makim, and still in all, once you did remove the light of the kav, the light of the Ein Sof entirely, there was complete empty space, which allowed for the possibility of the kalim. There was the reshima that was left over, that was the source of the kalim. Now, once there was the keli, so then they are able to receive the revelation of the light of the kav. How come? Why, if the kav was there all the time, the keli wouldn't be able to receive it? But once there was kalim, now you can bring the kav into them. Since the way the kalim came into being, what allowed for the formation of kalim? That was through the tzimtzum being in such a way. That's not that the Ein Sof minimized itself until there was a kav, but first there was complete empty space. So now, the way the kalim and the source of the kalim, which is the reshira, came into being, L'chein nishavu b'ofen kazeh, therefore the kalim came into being in such a manner. Not only do they not become completely bottled and cease to exist because they're overwhelmed by the revelation of the light of the kav. In other words, not only does the kav not manipulate them, but they now control the kav. Even more so, because the revelation that that the way the light becomes revealed is through the kalim. So now, instead of the kalim being completely not allowed to exist because of the Oir HaKav. It's just the opposite. The Kalim now exert their influence on the Oir HaKav. Why is that so? What is it about the Tzimtzum that all of a sudden allows the Kalim to be strong enough to be able to handle the Oir HaKav? So he says a very interesting thing. Because when you have a tzimtzum that's different than any other tzimtzum, that the tzimtzum completely empties out all space from the light, Misgala etzem shalamayla mageder the gilui oiris vehelem kelim. It becomes a revealed Hashem's essence that's beyond the whole concept of revelation. That's obvious because we're removing all revelation, but it's also revealed the essence that's beyond vessels because it's also no vessels over there either initially. Since the Tzimtzum B'derech Siluk is something that reveals the very essence that's beyond revelation and concealment, Iris versus Kalim, so that higher level that becomes revealed, so through that is Nasa Echibur the Iris v'Kalim. It becomes the joining of, Nasa Echibur the Kalim v'Iris becomes the joining of the Kalim and the Iris. So now he says, just like it's so concerning the relationship of the Kav with the Kalim, Al derech zeh, 3 lines from the bottom. So too concerning the light of the Kav. Through it's being drawn down from the infinite light of Hashem. Was in such a way that it was a constriction in a way that completely removed any previous revelation, which is the Elikenu, like we said, that's between the two Havayas. Now, the Oir HaKav will not just cease to be through the revelation of the infinite light of the Bligvul, but even more so, like we said. So we're saying that not only does the Oir HaKav, when Mashiach comes and there's a revelation of the... I'm sorry? Oh.
You back up a minute? Because you broke up.
Okay, so we were saying that when the Tzimtzum B'derech Siluk takes place, so then the essence that's beyond the revelation and beyond concealment, the essence that's beyond the lights and the vessels comes into being, and therefore that higher level enables that there should be a joining of the lights and vessels. The same thing he's going to talk about now, how from Memal Kalam we jump to Soiv Kalam, how from the light of the Kav that enables us to have the Gilui of the Soiv Kalam in the future. We would think that the Gilui of the Oir HaKav should be totally obliterated by what's going to happen in the revelation of La'asad Lavai, but we say no, because of Elikenu, which is a din, but is noite to Chesed and to Rachamim. It's a gvura, it's a concealment, it's a tzimtzum that is innately has a connection with Chesed and din. So therefore, al derech zeh, 3 lines from the bottom after the brackets. Ugam b'negei Oir HaKav. It's also concerning the light of the Kav. Through it's coming down from the infinite light of Hashem. Came down through the tzimtzum in a way of the ultimate tzimtzum, removal of the light. Through that it comes about in such a way that should not become nullified through the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem. Not only that, it becomes a vehicle even more so. It becomes a stepping stone, an enabler that specifically through the Oira Kav, through the Oira Malaklam, which we have in Gan Eden, we're going to be able to have the revelation of the infinite light of Hashem, the Oira Soiv of Kol Almin, that's going to happen when Mashiach comes.